Do I need to have the microphone all the way up, or does it?
It's live, bro. That thing hot, bro.
Okay,
it's plenty hot.
All right.
So there is cool.
Bet.
We got Father's Day coming up, June. You know, of course, podcast is dedicated to men, all this kind of different stuff, and you are definitely a man that I respect. You are definitely a father that I respect, just, you know, from our conversations and our interaction. And so I'm going through just the men, you know, and I'm just talking to people, just getting some different perspectives on fatherhood, you know, the challenges, the good, the bad, you know, how you qualify a good father, you know, is providing the basic necessities: food, water, clothing, shelter. Is that enough? Does that qualify you as good? Like, you know, talk a little bit, you know, about your experience and kind of how. So you got sons and you got daughters, so you're in a unique position. So
yeah,
I don't know if you parent them different in terms of your approach. Like, some people look at it. One guy said, you know, he doesn't think it's any different from, you know, being a father to the girl or to the boy. He says, you know, I want my kids to understand these principles, and these principles are universal. So I want to hear your thoughts. You know, speak freely, and I'll ask some questions. And,
yeah, definitely.
You know, I'm sure you'll drop some knowledge, man.
I think you touched on something that I don't believe enough people understand. Providing shelter, food, and protection as a father, that's table stakes, right? That's what's to be expected of you. And ultimately, I think that internally, that's what we expect from ourselves. So those are things that we have to automatically bring to the table. I think that being a father is being resilient. And what I mean by that is there's going to be times that you're the bad guy. There's going to be the time that you're understanding the impacts of this short-term decision and what it may lead to in the bigger picture, and you may provide your guidance based off of that bigger picture. But you also have to have the steadfast approach that not everybody's going to see that bigger picture, and if you are the one that sees it, then you're responsible for bringing it to fruition. Okay. You had brought up something about me having a daughter and 2 sons and whether or not I father differently. Well, I think that up to a certain age, I had to father very similarly because there were core foundational traits that I had to put in my kids. Okay. Right. So anywhere from, let's say, birth to maybe about 6, I definitely did treat my children the same. But after that 6 marker, hey, I'm helping to raise a queen, right? Okay. And there's certain things that mom has to be able to instill at that point in time, and I don't have any perspective from a woman's standpoint. So there is going to be a divergence from the type of guidance and support and fatherhood I provide to my daughter versus my sons, and some of that is what I say to my wife in jest, but there's always some truth in jest. Like, hey, I'm married to my wife, but at this moment in time, I'm raising a queen, so I'm dating my daughter, where I'm really providing her the example of what a man should be to her, from a relational standpoint. Not just the manners of opening up the door, telling you I love you, holding you, and protecting you, but there's other things that come along with it, and I want to make sure that she has that perspective as well. I'm gonna say this. It's gonna sound funny, but I'm trying to make it so that the image of the man that I create for her is such a hurdle for her to find out there in the world when she gets out there and starts to date, that particular barrier to entry is so high that it automatically limits the lower individuals from even engaging with her. Yeah, right? Cutting some stuff off automatically. Yeah. You don't qualify. Exactly. Oh, my dad did this. Right. Oh, my dad did that. Oh, my dad could do that. Wait, you don't do this? All right. You might not be for me, right? So that's how I look at it when I'm raising my daughter. And when I'm raising my sons, it's funny because even though I have the same mentality as my daughter, there's a little bit more of the prepare versus the protect.
Okay.
Right now, I'm protecting my daughter by providing her additional insight on what a man should be. But that's exemplary, right? That's something that she is looking at me doing.
Okay.
For my sons, I'm preparing them to be that provider, that protector, right?
Okay.
So that's the biggest difference between the two. The standard that I hold for my sons, though it's high, I'm not saying that it's not the same for my daughter, but there are different standards I expect from my sons.
Okay.
Firm believer that kids could be irresponsible, pets could be irresponsible, husbands and men can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I rock with that. You know, I think that's I don't feel like it's very different outside of pocket or anything like that I've heard some people say. I think it's a unique approach. And so I want to touch on something that you said earlier, you know, because I don't get a lot of girl dads in here, right? Every dad beats their chest for the son. Oh, man, I got my boys, man. You know, so you already got a game plan on how, you know, you're going to raise your boys or whatever. You know, I'm going to teach them this. I'm going to show them this. And, you know, like you said, I'm preparing them to be a man. And I want to talk to what that means to prepare them to be a man. You know, what does it mean to teach to be a man? I want to touch on that. So I'll pause with that for a moment. But I want to, before I get there, I want to ask about your daughter. So you said you are being an example of the type of man. You know, you're displaying certain attributes and certain characteristics, which I think is all well and good. Like you said, mom's going to come in and mom's going to groom you in some other ways that, you know, dad may not necessarily be able to do. My in this, I ask all dads this, you know, all girl dads this specifically. So I'm not gonna, you're no different. Are you teaching her how to be a wife from a man's perspective? Because a woman understands how to be a wife from a woman's perspective. And so there's some things that mom's gonna teach. That's all well and good, but it's some stuff that mom does that you know, like I know, like, hey, I need to help you understand men a little bit better. And do you approach it from that standpoint, or have you gotten to that place with your daughter?
Yes, and it's funny that you say that, because you're 1,000% correct. Not only am I preparing her to be a member, a contributing, positive member of society, but I'm also prepping her up to be a wife. Right? And there's one thing to provide a whole bunch of words on what a wife should be to a husband. And there's another thing to be present and be a husband to that wife. And a lot of times what I've noticed is that as I address certain, I don't want to call them issues, but certain misconceptions within my marriage from my wife's perspective, my daughter's around for that. So she's able to see, like, oh, wait, men may not like this, right? My husband may not like this. I'm looking at my dad engage with my mom, and he's telling her that, hey, you need to allow me to do this, this, and this as I'm raising our kids, or you need to allow me to take lead in this particular area. She's seeing that, all right, exemplary, this is what a husband is supposed to provide for a family, for a wife. And to be upfront with you, my wife lost her father early on in her life, so she didn't have an opportunity to see what the dynamics between a husband and a wife was. Right? And now we're going through 15 years of marriage, and she's thank you. She has a new perspective on, okay, well, heck, my mom did this, but my mom had to do this because the circumstances demanded it. It does not mean that that's what a wife needs to be. Actually, it might undermine what a wife is supposed to be for a husband.
Okay, so you just said a mouthful, and I'm so glad that you did, simply because I had a conversation earlier this morning, and even yesterday that touched on explaining and the value of why. And oftentimes in our culture specifically, we've got generations of men and parents that have just denied the why because I said so.
Yeah.
And to ask why, to even challenge my thought is how it at least it was perceived for me as a kid. Like, you challenging like what I'm saying, like, oh man, that's some disobedience right there. That's going to get you, you finna get served up something real nice and good, something nice and hot.
Yeah.
So
we call that leather love.
Right. So it's one of those things where with your wife, her going and seeing, and sometimes we witness in you can see in it an example and observe it, but if you don't have the knowledge behind why, then sometimes you miss out on the understanding that actually makes the example powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I heard in like one of the business classes I was taking, one of the guys was talking about how companies copy other companies. And they're like, hey man, I'm doing the same strategy. I'm trying to do this exact same thing, but I don't understand why it's not successful for me. You never understood why they were doing what they were doing. And so you're always going to be behind. And so, from that standpoint, what you're saying with your wife learning that, hey man, my mom did this, that doesn't mean that it was right. That you have to understand the why behind what she did. Yeah, you lost your father, so it was some areas that she had to stand in the gap in, and she had to do it the best way she could. That doesn't mean that that's the best way possible. It's just the best at what she knows. And so I thought that was, very, very powerful to say that, that's a learning right there. And I guess the trickle down to that with her kids is, do you take the time to explain the whys to your daughter in terms of why you do things, and to your sons, because I think that's even in teaching, them how to be men. I think that's going to be a very valuable, I think we all learn from why, man. You know what I mean? Valuable lesson to have.
You know what? Yes.
Okay.
Simply answering the question, yes. And I have to have a caveat to that. There has to be a particular knowledge level before I start to explain. And with my daughter being a little older, I could definitely take some time and explain to her, do some signposting to her on why I do certain things, and also provide examples of the results of why I do those things. With my sons, I may not explain as much versus ask questions. Why did you think that was a good idea? Because I need to, again, understand your perspective so I could, again, tailor my message to you. But I also don't go that far in the weeds, because I understand from a cognitive standpoint, they may not be there yet, right? So that's how I look at that.
Okay. Now, if you can, dive into, the preparation process, as a father, like, to prepare your sons to be men, to, be all that you are, and the hope, I assume, is that they're better. That they even improve upon, what you're giving them as the foundation. And they become even better men, as part of your legacy and lineage. So what does that preparation process look like? Are there certain lessons that you're trying to teach them? Is there like a certain way that you go about it? And, what are the thoughts behind it? You know what I mean?
The messages that I teach them are the actions that I do every day.
Okay.
And the preparation that I approach each day with. I'm deliberate in how I engage a day. It sounds possibly cliche, but I have my motto, my creed, actually written on my mirror at home. The same mirror that both of my boys and I brush our teeth in front of. So we see those messages on what it means to be a right? At least from the perspective of dad. Hey, dad was resilient. Dad was patient. Dad was empathetic. Dad was accountable. Dad always did things in moderation. Dad was educated, and dad was dedicated. Right? Those are the core values that dad focused on and lived his life on. And those are the things that he's really embedding in us. So it's just being deliberate about that preparation, but not just being deliberate about it, being very pragmatic in regards to the approach, right? Being able to tell them what it means to be resilient and taking time to provide them examples on what resiliency is. Hey, I understand you may not have gotten the results that you wanted here, but there's certain things that we don't do, especially if we started a task. We're not going to give up. We're not going to quit, because if you quit, that's when you lose, right? Okay. Patience. Hey, I understand that you want to get this done and over with, but you need to approach it with patience. Why? Because there might be an opportunity for you to learn from this, right? Empathetic is my way of starting to show them why it's important to have emotional control. Okay. Right. And I start that empathy training based off of their emotions. Hey, son, how are you feeling? Okay. Right. You may be mad right now, but tell me how you feel and why did you get there? I found that instilling that emotional awareness early on provides them tools that a lot of our adult men don't have as of yet. Okay. Right. So if I could give them those tools early on, then they'll be masterful with the application of those tools. Right. So I really try to be deliberate and really make it as a, they say strong meat for men, milk for babes, and don't cast your pearls in front of swine. I try to break it down in bite-sized chunks for them to understand. So when I'm not around, whether that be them amongst their friends or when I transition to the afterlife and I'm just a spirit, they understood and still could fall back on dad's understanding and their interpretation of that understanding to move forward in a purposeful manner. I hope I answered the question.
I think you did. I mean, to me, I mean, your statement is when you done, you done. You know what I mean? So it's not a certain answer that I'm looking for or anything like that. I just want your thoughts. You know, this is your opinion. This is, you know, what I'll say your constitution is on fatherhood and manhood. And so, you know, you did answer one of the questions that I had in terms of like explaining the why. Yeah. So you are doing it. Yeah. And it becomes more in depth as they're able to receive more. Yeah. And so I completely get that. And I love the approach in terms of, you know, what it means to be a writer. Yeah. You know what I mean? So to me, that's a heck of an approach. That's some stuff that, you know, when I'm blessed and fortunate enough to have some children, hey, man, you know, I think I may steal some of that, right? Yeah. Are there any, you know, thoughts or things that you feel like as a father you're responsible for making sure that they have or that they understand? I know you touched on you said empathy, but if there's some stuff that as I'm talking like just came out, like, you know, jump right in, because I definitely want to at some point speak to emotional maturity and having them handle emotions, because I think that's huge. Especially in our community, as black men, you know, men just in general don't get the opportunity to have emotions, express them without, you know, being viewed in a certain light. And to hear you say that, hey, I'm being proactive in making sure that my children, my young men, my young kings understand, like, hey, it's okay to have emotions. That's part of the human experience. Yes. And I want you to get familiar enough with handling them that you know how to master these, you know, as you get older, man. So dive in anytime. So like I said, it's age appropriate content, right? So as they get older, I will definitely bring up Sun Tzu. I will make sure that they're aware of the strategies of war, 33 strategies of war. But one of the biggest nuggets or gems I want them to be aware of is to know your enemy. You are only going to win 50% of your battles. But to know thyself and know thy enemy, you'll win 100% of your battles. Right? So again, it's the age appropriate content. Now, when it comes down to sharing, I think that it's about perspective as well. And not just perspective of the individual you're sharing with, but your vantage point, your status, and your role
I think that my parenting changed when I understood that I am here only to be a memory for my kids.
Okay.
And when that hit me, that made me value the time that I spent with them more.
Okay.
That made me value the messages that I'm sharing with them. As a parent, as a father, I don't know which message is going to resonate the most with my kids. Mm-hmm. But I'd be damned if I'm only dropping 1 or 2 gems. I'm going to drop as many gems as possible and provide as many examples as possible and experiences as possible so they'll have a full repository to pull from.
Okay.
Right? And I think that that's one of the biggest things that us as fathers possibly fall short on.
Okay.
We have so much to think about, so many responsibilities to be aware of and to address that we forget what the most important thing is.
What's that?
That's the time and the memories that we provide to our children, right? That the lessons that we teach, those are memories.
Okay.
Us being present, those are memories.
Okay.
Our conversations with our wives while our kids are present, those are memories. And those are shaping who these little people are going to be. So, yeah.
So, you and I have known each other for about a decade now. And,
about a decade now. It rang different. It rang different.
I'm excited to say this, man, and I get happy and I smile because I've seen the growth. I've seen the maturity, man. And, I'm proud of you. My hat off to you for investing in yourself, seeing enough value in yourself to want to improve yourself and be better on a consistent daily basis. You know what I mean? And so I know your children are going to benefit from that. Now, as the man that you become, there's a lot of different stuff that's happened along the way in terms of you becoming the man that you become. Where did you get your initial concepts from? How did you construct what manhood is to you today, and like the way that you view manhood and stuff like that now, right? How different is it from what you might have initially been taught? Because I had an individual in here earlier today, and we were talking, and was just like, "Oh man, you see the cat in the street, and he, oh man, you done got some trim, boy, you got something on you, this, and this." And it's all of these things that we've been told that are, part of manhood, and this is what it means to be a man. Going out here knocking off chicks and doing this and doing this. So, like, some of the stuff that you might have gotten taught, might have been passed along. How were you able to filter some of that stuff to come up with, how you see things now? What's that journey kind of been like for you? I know it's a big question.
that is definitely a deep question, and the reason why it's a deep question is because when I look back at my childhood, I'm a son of an immigrant, right? And there are particular shortcomings that I had to deal with growing up, and it just is what it is. Certain misconceptions I had to really identify and address in myself as I got older, and there's no one point in time, one conversation, one book that I've read that has altered my opinion on what it is to be a man. But I can tell you one of the things that I discovered over time that has truly attributed to my growth. And that word, I think, doesn't get enough appreciation when it comes down to being a man. Growth.
Okay.
Right? If you're not growing, then you're dying.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that as I got older, I started to get into developing myself.
Okay.
Right. And when I started to identify how to develop myself, I started to really dive into reading.
Okay.
And I don't know where it actually clicked, but somewhere along that line, I got into spirituality.
Okay.
And from there is where I really started to see strides gained in regards to how I dealt with misconceptions, how I dealt with my own shortcomings.
Okay.
Right? By understanding myself, know thyself.
Okay.
So that's helped my growth in being a man. But again, without that growth, I would have easily been able to say, like, I'm comfortable right where I am. I can stay right where I am. That growth allowed me to be humble enough to know that the man that I am today shouldn't be the man that I am tomorrow, because I'm growing.
Right.
I'm growing into something more that God wants from me. So, yeah, it's funny because as you grow, you could almost see God's path developing for you. I say this to anybody that listens. In particular, I say it to any of my friends, my men friends. A lot of times when we're going through life, it's like looking through the windshield and all we see is chaos. All we see is us addressing and navigating the landscape in front of us. Mm-hmm. But it's not until we look into the rear view that we see how God has actually had all of those situations fall right in place to bring us to where we are. Now, the issue with that is you can't live in the rear view, because if you live in the rear view, you're going to wind up crashing. But you need to take some time to appreciate what God has done for you and understand and have faith that the journey is still going and you are still growing. So I think it was probably around 26, 27 that I changed my approach to work. Okay. And before I used to say, hey, I'm about to go in here and get this bag. I'm about to go in and get this bag. But as I got older, I understood the time value of money. Okay. And I knew that time and money didn't add up. Those were not two equal variables. They're not. But what is probably the best return on investment is investing in yourself. So education and constant growth. So yeah, as I took that journey of growth within myself, all of those misconceptions that I had about being a father, being a man, definitely changed. Definitely changed.
Do you want to share any of the misconceptions?
Any
that stand out to you?
Any that stand out? Like, okay, as a young man, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, sowing my royal oats was something that I wanted to do. Right. I'm joking around about sowing royal oats because, well, no, I'm not. I'm definitely royal. Definitely royal. But the idea was, I'm a man if I'm out here knocking off all these chicks. Right. Well, as I got older, I understood that beauty is beauty. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is you have to be able to appreciate beauty for what it is. Most young men don't understand the fact that the flower is beautiful no matter what. The flower only dies once you pluck it. Right. And when I started to look at my female counterparts that way, it changed the way that I engage with them. Mm. Right. So that's one misconception. The next misconception that I had was that, and I had to address, and I kind of said it a little earlier, that learning stops after school. Okay. And that's an easy way to plateau in life. You hear people say, oh, that individual peaked. That individual peaked in high school. That individual peaked a couple years after college. You know, in order to not have that happen, then you constantly have to grow. Mm. So those are a couple of misconceptions. One other misconception I had was what masculinity was. Okay, talk to me, man. And a lot of times we look at masculinity as banging our chests and ready to do whatever is needed from a physical standpoint, and ready to come to blows. But I realized that that's a very immature way of approaching things. Okay. And that awareness came when I started to dive into emotional control and emotional awareness. I think you've had an opportunity to see how I deal with conflict, and don't get me wrong, I have no problem going to physical blows if need be. I got a daughter, so yeah. But I also understand that it doesn't have to be like that, right? They say that a majority of the wars are won before the first shot is fired. Mm-hmm. That's because the war happens up in the gray matter, in the head. You know, and to be able to navigate conflict from a higher level, most people don't choose to do that. I heard one of the best quotes. You should have a standard that needs to be met before you argue with somebody.
Oh, man.
Right?
Let's say that one more time.
Yeah, you should have a standard that's met before you argue with somebody. There needs to be a particular level of intellectual, an intellectual level that a person needs to meet before you even consider to argue with them. But we all heard the moniker, what? Don't argue with fools, because from a distance, you don't know who's who. Hey, don't argue with clowns because you just become part of the circus, right? That's, again, you have to have a level that an individual has to get with before you even engage them in an argument. Because that's an easy way for you to protect your own emotional well-being, right? So, yeah.
Man, so I love that. As I'm wrapping up, I want to ask you this question, and it may be something that you thought about, maybe something that you haven't, but if you got to take a moment to kind of think through it. I'm curious, as a father, I don't know any men in my experience that don't feel positive about, being a father, right? Of course, there's no manual. There's nothing that says, hey, man, do this way, and it's going to guarantee these results. And so, being a father is not met without challenges, stress, a little worry, sometimes some doubt, am I doing the best thing or something like that. But ultimately, you put together the best plan that you can to yield the results that you can. And from what I hear, it's fun along the process. My question to you is, how would you say being a father has made you a better man?
Wow. Wow. That's a very big question. And why that's a big question is because I look at it as I finally have an understanding of what unconditional love is.
Okay.
Right? I think that when you get married, or if you get married, there's a vow that takes place between your spouse, and not your spouse, yourself, and the Lord, right? And that is one of commitment.
Okay.
But when you look at being a father or stepping into any parental role, there's no choice.
Meaning what?
There's no choice. There's not a choice that's made that says when the child comes out, I'm going to love them unconditionally. Yes or no. It automatically turns on like, no, you know what? As a father, I'm willing to give my life for this child. I only have a certain amount of horses in this race, and this is one of them. Okay. And no matter good, bad, indifferent, this is my horse. This is who I'm choosing. But the relationship that I have with my kids also helps me define the relationship I have with my wife. Okay. Because, again, when I look at unconditionality, I have that for my kids, but I also have to be able to have that same type of love for my wife, right? When things get hard, do I treat I don't want to say treat my wife as my kid, but do I have the same type of patience for my wife as I would for my kids? So I think that as I became a father and really stepped into the role, it helped me understand what unconditional love looks like, and also make it a point to choose unconditional love whenever I'm engaging with my wife or during a hard time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, man, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful answer, man. And, what you just made me think about is part of a conversation that I had a little earlier this week. And with that conversation was an individual talking about making sure that as a father and as a mature man, that you are demonstrating love, in the household on a consistent day-to-day basis. Love being demonstrated to mom, love being demonstrated to the kids, because there are some lessons that are only going to come through correction. And so, even in doing that, your kids have to understand, wife has to understand, as you being the head, that like I'm doing this in love. And so, like I know as somebody that's played lots of sports, man, and played it at a high level, like there are some coaches that can't get anything out of it, okay? And you've seen and you watch and you're like, dang, bro, this man got all kind of talent on the team. Why can't he get this? And there's that one coach that everybody on the team will run through a wall for, man. And he pulls the very best out of them. And generally speaking, that's because those individuals that are willing to run through the wall or go to battle, go to war, exhaust themselves for this person, know that they're connected in a different way, man. I'm not just an X. I'm not just an O. I'm not just Jimmy. I'm not just Joe. But that I know and I have a relationship and this person cares for me. And you're able to get the best out of them. And so I'm happy to hear you say that, because, there's a certain level of grace that we have to show to our family.
Amen.
And sometimes we feel like the people at home should bear the burden of all of the other stuff that's going around. And so the way one client expressed it was, he was like, not even am I treating my wife like I treat the kids and unconditional love stuff, but however, he said, are you showing your wife and your kids the same level of grace that you give to your colleagues? Somebody in the workspace comes to you.
That's him.
It's him. Somebody in the workspace does something. Do you go off on them? Or do you give them the benefit of the doubt?
What is that?
Explain what you need to explain.
You give the best to everybody else and the rest to us at home.
So
you give your very best to your colleagues, and you allow us to have the leftovers. You know what I mean? What's up, my guy?
What's going on?
I'm feeling it.
Good, brother. You good. So I love that. Like I said, I love that, and I'm glad to see that you have recognized that. That's something that I'm glad that you were able to share and express, because I think not a lot of men, I don't think it's intentional, but I think that it's something that we need to be cognizant and aware of, that like, hey man, the same way that you have that grace, that awareness in these situations, apply that to the people who actually mean the most. And you said something in that regard, like, understanding what's really of value. You know what I mean? And so when you understand that, like, hey man, like my family is really what I value, then shouldn't those be the individuals, whether that's my wife, my kids, that I treat with the most, respect, that I handle them the most, like they're precious, you know what I mean?
It's so
and
true.
Oftentimes we don't do that, and so I look at it and I just think to myself, like, hey man, like I said before, man, I know your family is in good hands, man, just, in our conversations, but I'm happy that you were able to, share and just drop a little knowledge, drop some wisdom, man, for some other brothers out there, man. Hopefully they can take some notes, man. And be better.
I'll leave you with this one thing I told my wife when she was dealing with like hard situations at work. I said, you practice your soft skills at home. Right? The soft skills are the people skills, right? You practice that at home, so when you go out into the world, you'll be able to utilize those tools. They've been sharpened at home, so you'll be able to wield those tools. So, again, that's an easy way to, I guess, step around that issue of you give the best to everybody else and the worst to me at home. But thank you for having me.
Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. Thank you, sir.